Okay, so here's part one of here's what happened. All right, so it's the year 1999 and my career is off and running. I was booking commercials, television and film. It was great. All right, I was on my way. And I was in church on Sunday morning and I was talking to a friend of mine before service, Dan and Green. And he told me he was taking an acting class with Bill Duke, the great legendary actor Bill Duke. And he said, you should take his class, man. It's great. They got this big book and he said, it's like $500. But he said, it's great, man. It's more than worth it. And so, I heard that and the service is about to start. And so my mother-in-law, my mother-in-law, Sweet Lily, she said, Mike, you should teach a class on commercials. She said, people are always asking you and Ani, how do you do TV commercials? How do y'all do all them commercials? We just saw you this morning on TV before we came to church. And so now my head is spinning. So I'm like, the service started and I couldn't even focus. It's like, I'm thinking, I sat for about 2 hours with goosebumps and heat, just thinking about running my own business and helping actors. And because it was difficult for me when I first started, there was things I just didn't know and I'm trying to figure it out and the whole thing. And I'd moved to Hollywood a couple of times trying to figure things out and had to go back home, get my old job back. And so I'm just sitting there excited. I don't even know what Pastor Bishop Ulmer said that day, but I went home and I was so excited. I sat at my dining room table and I drew up the course curriculum in less than 2 days, about a day and a half. I had written up the course curriculum. All right, so I created the name, Hey, I Saw Your Commercial. Because people would always see me in commercials and say, hey, did I see you in a commercial? Hey, is that you in a commercial? Right? So people would always ask me that. And so when I'm trying to name the course, I didn't want to call it Mike Pointer Commercial Class because that sounds kind of boring. I wanted something just odd enough for people to remember. So I named it, I took what everyone kept saying and then I just picked my favorite, which is, Hey, I Saw Your Commercial. Right? They would actually say, hey, I saw you in a commercial. So I shaped it down to, hey, I saw your commercial. People always ask, how did you come to name your course that name? It's such a different name, right? But it's always been, all these years, memorable enough for people to remember, right? So, so that's how I created the name. So I created a brochure, very generic, just trifold kind of brochure to get started. And I wanted to, I'm out and putting stuff all over these different acting studios and some other coaches would take them and throw them away. One time I went to one place, Lillian Theater, and I set up my brochures with the little plastic stand and the whole thing. Then I went back 2 hours later after a class I taught and someone took them and just threw them in the street. And I'm like, wow, that's not very kind. But, so that was challenging. And then I created another brochure with my wife and I in it, because originally my wife, my sweet wife, Ani, she was going to help me teach. But then we started having children. And I think John was just coming along. And so I'm like, well, I'll just handle it myself. And my wife decided to continue with her career. And I'm pretty sure, I maybe check with her on that. But yeah, she stayed home and I provided the income. The Lord blessed me to provide the income. And so that's why she's on that flyer, the yellow one. But then I created a more professional flyer, something I actually took to a printer and had produced. So that was great. It's time to go shopping. Now I got my idea together. I got the brand name together. Now I need some equipment. So I bought a tripod, bought a camera, all the other supporting equipment. And I am ready to launch, man. I'm like, man, I'm gonna start this course, right? And then I got scared. I was afraid for a whole year. I was afraid that, you know, it's like, who are you to teach? I had what they call the imposter syndrome. Who do you think you are that you could teach a class and charge people for it, right? And so imposter syndrome kicked in for a year. And then, so I had all that equipment in the corner where the Christmas tree belongs around Christmas time. It was just sitting there. And my wife was like, you better get that equipment out of here. We got to put the tree there. And she said, why are you afraid? Why don't you just start the course? Because I'd been on the phone, people were calling, hey, I'm calling about your commercial course. And I was like, I think it's gonna start next week, right? And my wife heard me tell 22 people on the phone, I think I'm gonna start, it's supposed to start. And one lady just straight up, she just said, hey, is it gonna start or is it not gonna start? Are you having this course or what? And my wife heard me trying to trip over my tongue and explain. And then my wife just said, Ani said, hey, why don't you just rent the studio, get the key, put the key in the door and start the course. You know, they say, listen to your wife, husbands, right? So that's exactly what I did. You know, I looked, I found a studio. It was on TU Studios in North Hollywood. So I started my first class Saturday, March 3rd, the year 2000 at 8:45 a.m., right? I started with 8 students and 3 of them were free because the 3 were family members and a friend, right? I'd asked them to sit in on the course and make it look like there's more people in it. So they wouldn't think, oh man, this guy ain't got nothing going on. Forget this dude, right? So started off with 8. And it was a great first class. It was wonderful. I was just like really excited about it. So that first day went well, and the months afterwards went well. And I'm about 5-6 months into it, 8 months into it, and I got tired of renting from someone. I said, I want my own studio. So after 8 months of coaching, I decided to look for my own studio. And during my search, I became doubtful again that I would even find a place. I'm like, where? Am I going to teach in Burbank, North Hollywood? Should I teach closer to Pasadena? I just didn't know what to do. And so one day, I'm driving down La Brea, on South La Brea, and I drive past La Brea and Olympic in LA. And I'm driving by, right? And I saw for rent, or for lease, I think it said. I'm driving by and I'm like, oh man, wow, look at that. So there was a number there, like a 213 number. So I called the property manager. His name, I'll never forget his name. It was Deke Caseby. Sounds like an actor, Deke Caseby. And he said, you're calling about that property at 1017 South La Brea? I said, yeah. He said, you better get over here if you're serious about it. I got somebody else coming over here and they're gonna take it. And man, I hopped in my car, I raced over to Santa Monica, and I didn't have time to, oh, let me sleep on it, let me think about it and all that. It's like, man, the opportunity is there to have your own studio. I raced over there, sat down with Deke, let me have a driver's license, and you know, he ran my credit somehow really quick, or he just trusted me or whatever. And he gave me the keys, and I'm walking out of the place, and here comes dude coming in to take it. Because I looked back at Deke, I was like, thank you, right? And he like nodded like that was him. And I'm like, man, I'm glad I moved on that one. And the lease was only I think it was $817 a month for about almost an 800 square foot studio. No, it was like 750 or something like that, 750 square feet. It was a steal. It was great. And that was a true blessing for me. I mean, okay, it did look like an apartment building. It didn't look like a traditional studio for actors. In fact, they say 1017 South La Brea used to be the Rams headquarters back in the day, in the 60s. This is what they say, like all 4 spaces, all 4 studios or sections of it, the rooms were the Rams headquarters, and people used to come in. I guess some people that know LA history far better than I do, they said, this used to be the Rams headquarters. Is that why you picked your colors for your company? I was like, no, I had no clue this was the Rams headquarters. I didn't even think about the Rams color scheme, right? But it was great. And, you know, I had about 150 square foot classroom. And then, no, that was the waiting area. It's 150 square foot waiting area, about a 200 square foot classroom, and a little photography area because I started taking pictures, and that was great. And I was really blessed to attract some wonderful clients because they met them and they started booking. I met a young lady named Simone Messick, right? And she ended up booking. She was Misty Knight. I met her in 2008. She ended up booking as Misty Knight on Luke Cage. I think it was 2012. And then she ended up getting her own TV series called All Rise, The Black Judge. Her show. That was awesome. And then that Hetty Wong, she produced and sold her own script called Takeout Girl to Hulu. Courtney Nicole, series regular on Tyler Perry's Assisted Living. Space Force. Rahul Nath booked Space Force with Steve Carell, John Malkovich, Home Economics TV series he directed. Trying to remember all this. Michelle Bernard, she's always recurring on 911 and The Rookie. Massimo Dubrovik, very interesting character, because when I met him, he was like, Coach Mike, they tell me my accent is too big and I won't work in Hollywood. I said, Massimo, you listen to me, follow my lead, and I will guide you. Massimo has worked with Brendan Fraser on Behind the Curtain. I'm not talking about background. These are like serious roles. Behind the Curtain of Life with Brendan Fraser, The Secret of Karma with Brendan Fraser, Bot with Randy Couture, Denise Richards. He also had great lead parts with, who was it? Vern Troyer, Martin Sheen, Steven Seagal, Mina Suvari. So none of this accent stuff stopped him. He's got a great personality, great spirit. And I see, you know, just big things on the horizon from Massimo. And Raul Garcia, he booked a great commercial with Michael Jordan for Hanes after he took my course. And then he just booked The Neighborhood with Cedric the Entertainer, the HBO series called A Hero's Journey. And who knows what else since then. I haven't talked to him in a minute. But I was blessed to meet some wonderful actors. Along with the on-camera coaching, I created a great business plan playbook also. And because most actors that take acting classes, they never get adequate business coaching. And that is really what's stopping them. I always say you need both. You need performance coaching and you need business coaching. You're gonna need them both to be successful. If you don't have it, then you got a Ferrari with no engine or a Bentley with no rims and tires, I always say. So I also created the first of its kind in 2008. I created my online university. Hey, I saw your commercial, worldwide online university for actors mainly that didn't live in LA and couldn't come to the studio. So I believe, as far as my research, I'm the first coach in Los Angeles and maybe even the world that created like an acting college online, right? I called it the Worldwide Online University. And I had a van with my company logo on it. You know, I bought a white van and I got it wrapped. That was great. And you know, I had some great times and great memories working with my actors on 1017 South La Brea. Well, it's time to grow. All right, so after almost 16 and a half years of teaching at the La Brea location, it was time for me to move to a bigger and better studio. So in 2015, I moved into a new studio at 5511 West Pico in LA, about 5 minutes from the La Brea studio. And I absolutely loved this studio. It was one big room. And that's what I always wanted because I needed more room. So the one big room, as opposed to La Brea, sat, gosh, I think maybe 40 people in that room. And then I had some seating around the walls I could fill. So that was great for some of my bigger classes and my bigger events. It had concrete floor. I remember when I pulled up, it said studio for lease. I pulled up, got out of the car, looked in the window, and I saw concrete floors. And man, my jaw just dropped. I'm like, I've always wanted concrete floors, because carpet smells funny after a while. It get that good old James Brown funky smell, right? Some good George Clinton funk up in there. So I said, oh man, concrete floors, this is awesome. And I put 2 ceiling fans in, nice wood ceiling fans to match my wood chairs, had custom director chairs. It was just awesome. And I used to have a waiting list because it was so full every month. I used to actually have to tell actors I don't have any room and you got to wait till next month. And I was at the peak of my coaching success. But as all things, eventually they have to come to an end, because in 2020, here comes the pandemic. And, you know, I fought to keep my studio as long as I could, but I lost half of my client base. I think it was March of 2020. It was March 14 or March 15. And people just started leaving. And the few that came back, I mean, they were like terrified. People were wearing gloves and their whole head wrapped. And, you know, they'd give me cash and they'd wrap it up in an envelope and, you know, like almost secretly give it to me, like this is cyanide in here or something, you know, beware, who knows what it is, right? And it's like, wow. So I eventually had to move, but I fought before I moved. I fought. I kept teaching, because I wouldn't dare let the government take my business away from me that I had built. And the police were coming by, knocking on my door. I used to peek out of my window. There's the police. One time I let him in, end up making friends with one of the cops, right? And he said, the reason that, you know, the health board keeps calling you, because the health board kept calling me, is because you have your dates of your classes on your website. So I'm telling you, if you take the dates off, just kind of teach low key, they'll leave you alone. Even the cops knew it wasn't right to just take people's business away from them, right? The weed shops got to stay open, right? So, and the strip bars and the liquor stores, see, they got to stay open. They were essential, but I wasn't, right? As well as all my other colleagues and other business owners that lost their businesses, right? So, you know, I fought as long as I could. Neighbors were snitching on me. Right? He teaching classes, people walking by my studio late at night looking at me all crazy. And so eventually I ended up moving. It was smarter for me to move than sit up in there with 5 and 6 students. So I moved, and praise God, because I transitioned right into Zoom coaching. So my courses now are bigger than ever. I work with actors all over the world, and just finished with a young lady from Iceland. And then just finished also with a lady from Dubai. So it's really been great. Praise God for Zoom coaching. All right, so why did you stop acting, Mike? You still haven't explained to us why you stopped acting. Well, this is part 1 of Here's What Happened. And I didn't want to rush my story. So the decision to stop acting probably saved my life and definitely saved my marriage, I believe. So stay tuned, hang on for me. Part 2 is coming of Here's What Happened, why I stopped acting.